Good evening and welcome to the Police Accountability Board regular meeting agenda. Regular meeting for Wednesday, May 24, 2023. The PAB has resumed in-person meetings and encourages community members to attend in person. Community members attending in person should observe the health and safety protocols for in-person meetings of Berkeley boards and commissions, as outlined by the City of Berkeley. The PAB acknowledges that physical attendance may not be feasible for all community members. To this end, the Office of Director of Police Accountability has been exploring the option of allowing for remote participation at the PAB meetings. Please note that the ODPA and the PAB are in the early stages of implementing this hybrid meeting format, so there is a possibility for technical glitches and errors. Your patience and understanding are greatly appreciated. To access this meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, or iPad, iPhone, or Android device using this URL listed below. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu and click on rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. To join by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 826-5359-6072. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press *9 and wait to be recognized. At this part of the meeting, I'd like to recognize the land acknowledgement that we speak at the first meeting of every month. And with that, I'd like to bring the call to order, agenda item number 1.
We have the roll call split up, so I'll go ahead just to ensure that we have a quorum. Board member Calavita? Here. Board member Vice Chair Harris is currently running late. Board member Lefwich? Here. Chair Moore?
Here.
Board member Williams is currently absent. And board member Leo Wilson? Here.
And welcome.
Thank you.
And with that brings us to agenda item number 2. The administer oath of office and confidentiality to our newest member, which is District 5 member, board member Leo Wilson, nominated by council member.
If I may, Chair.
Please.
Good evening, my name is Wilson. My name is Hampton Aguilar. I'm the chair, I'm the director of police accountability here. So I provide support to the Police Accountability Board. As the new member confirmed last night by City Council, we're just going to administer a oath of office and confidentiality.
Okay.
If you could stand up and repeat after me, please. I, Leo Wilson, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
discharge the duty
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
I further swear or affirm
I further swear or affirm
that I will abide by
that I will abide by
and maintain the confidentiality
and maintain the confidentiality
of the personnel files of sworn employees
of the personnel files of sworn employees
of the police department
of the police department
and all other matters
and all other matters
that are confidential pursuant to the state and federal law.
that are confidential pursuant to state and federal laws.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, great.
And because we've already taken care of the roll call to ensure forum, that will take us to agenda item number 4, which is the approval of the agenda of the last meeting. If there's any changes, concerns, criticisms, or questions, now is the time.
Move we approve.
Not seeing or hearing any objections and seeing that there's only very few of us to do so in the first place, we're gonna go ahead and move along to, and consider that pass and move along to agenda item number 5. My favorite part of the evening, public comment.
Okay, so as always, we'll start with the folks who are here present with us. Is anybody here who would like to provide public comment?
Yes,
Mhm.
hello. Very good to see all of you. I am Councilmember Harrison. I'm here to welcome Ms. Wilson, who I've worked with for, I think, over 30 years. At the Judicial Council, then she left us to go to the state, the Alameda County Courts and the state bar. And so I have a long amount of knowledge of Leah's work and her approach to disciplinary matters, where they obviously work at the bar on discipline of attorneys. So I'm gratified to see her here. I actually came today though for another reason. I came to meet Lucky. And I'm wondering when that is going to be in the agenda. My purpose is to meet Lucky the Wonder Dog. So if you can tell me when that'll be, it's great.
Or she's lucky all the way to the end.
No. We can't move that forward so I can say hi.
Oh, sure. Oh, this is-
Of course. The
I
chair
really
will
love
allow,
this
the chair will allow.
Thank you. I so appreciate you doing this.
Yes, I just want to. Oh,
No, sweetheart.
And Jose, at the same time as this meeting is going on, the record can reflect that vice chair is into the building. I appreciate that. How you doing, Vice Chair? It's good to see you.
I've been all over Berkeley tonight. The only other thing I want to say is this is Mental Health Month. We gave a proclamation last night to honor Mental Health Month, and clearly I think that efforts like these really help advance the mental health of our community. So I want to thank the director again, and thank all of you, and welcome Commissioner Wilson, and we will now leave. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for coming, Councilmember
welcome.
Harrison. Appreciate it.
At this time, are there any other members physically present that would like to provide public comment? Seeing, hearing none, we will now move on to those who are attending virtually. You may raise your hand to be given time to speak. Chair, at this time, I do not see any hands raised.
Unfortunately, we will move on at this point. Seeing that there's no hands raised, we're gonna go to agenda item number 6, approval of the minutes. If there's any changes, anything that needs to be questioned, any concerns, highlights, anything we need to talk about, while it's on.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Not seeing or hearing any objection to those motions, we're gonna go ahead and move forward with that. And consider those minutes sealed, signed, and delivered. And now at this time, it's agenda item number 7, and not to put you on the spot, new board member Wilson, but this is your time to introduce yourself to the board and to the community.
Okay, wonderful. Well, first, let me say I'm really excited to be appointed and to be giving service to the community. Some of you may have read that I was once on the Berkeley School Board. That was many years ago, and since then I have not been so engaged in the community in which I live, and so I'm really looking forward to that. I've been here in Berkeley for a very long time. I am currently, as Kate mentioned, the executive director of the State Bar of California. I met Kate, my very first job. She actually interviewed me for my first job at the Judicial Council. So I worked in the judicial branch for my entire career and the courts. I was the court executive officer in Alameda County prior to moving to the State Bar. So I've got a lot of experience on the court side of the justice system, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about policing through this process and really helping to bring to life the vision of this accountability board as reflected in the charter. So just looking forward to working with everyone, and yeah, that's it. I got 3 grown, little bio, I have 3 grown kids, and I live not too far from here, and yeah.
Excellent.
That's a bit about me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to have you.
Yeah, we look forward to you coming on and joining us with the work. And that would take us to agenda item number 8. Is that correct?
Number,
Yeah. it should be.
oh yeah, sorry.
Okay, no problem. We're gonna go to the ODP
Thanks, sir.
8 staff report. I can move on the fly, okay?
Mr. Chair, if we can, I don't think we acknowledge the staff that is
Please
present.
do. Thank you.
Do you have?
Yeah, so joining us virtually, we have Captain Durbin. One moment while I check my, where'd it go? Sorry about that. We have Captain Durbin, Lieutenant Reese. Seriously, where is it? Ah, here it is. And that's actually everyone we have virtually. right
In the
now.
city attorney?
We currently don't have any members from the city attorney's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move on to the staff report. Councilmember Harrison was here. She mentioned that I had a proclamation yesterday for mental health awareness month. So we're talking about that a little bit later about the therapy animal program that we're launching. Also last night at city council meeting, we got 2 new appointees, Ms. Wilson and Mr. Williams. Currently not present here today. But there was also the bulk of the meeting was a live 3-hour debate and public hearing about the surveillance ordinance items related to fixed surveillance cameras and unmanned area systems. And I do want to acknowledge to the members of the board and the public that on a group vote on my behalf, the agenda packet didn't reflect the hard work that was done by the board. That is me not fully understanding yet the process to get on that agenda packet. So I'm gonna make sure I'm speaking with the clerk on Friday, making sure that doesn't happen again. I have submitted it to the full council, but that is not sufficient to get on the council agenda packet. There's a whole protocol in place, and I'll make sure that our office follows it so that doesn't occur again and that their work is reflected. In though that live discussion or that lively debate and hearing, there were a lot of different concerns expressed by council stakeholders. The policy as written was conflating some issues with some of the concerns by the council members. And that played in issues of crime prevention, reduction, and also the staff monitoring issue raised a lot of concern also from the various unions within the city. They didn't fully understand how that would play out into the day-to-day operations, and they also felt some of the unions that they weren't represented in those discussions, and they felt that a meet and confer was necessary if that element of the policy was to remain. So all in all, the council decided not to make any decisions at the meeting last night, and they postponed a vote on it until June 13th. So we'll see it on the council agenda again. If there's any other opportunities for the board to engage with the police department on any lingering issues, we'll make sure that that's addressed.
Yeah, just a question about the unions. Which unions had concerns?
Oh,
I'm not really understanding how that came into play.
So apparently, unbeknownst to us, really, when we studied this in subcommittee and then in the full board, the policy that was put forward by the police department kind of merged external facing cameras like to the public thoroughfares and more internal facing cameras like at the public works department. And you may remember that one of the uses that was suggested in the police department policy, one of the uses was being able to oversee employees. Remember, we all thought, well, that's really weird. What is that about? And that's because there was also there was not just the external cameras for crime prevention and stuff, but there were cameras at locations where city employees were working. And so there was some discussion. A lot of discussion was about trying to decouple these two pieces of the policy. And it came up that some unions I don't know exactly which, but I don't think it was the police union, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was the, like, Department of Public Works and other employees of the city had not maybe had a chance to. In any case, the council wants to separate out these two parts of a policy related to fixed cameras.
So they're going to?
Yes,
Oh.
and then, I mean, it went on a really long time, 3.5 hours or something, and it got to be 11 o'clock. And council meetings have to end at 11 o'clock unless there's a vote to extend the time. And you need a 2/3 vote to extend the time. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, 4 members of the council didn't vote to extend the time, and therefore time ran out, and they're gonna have to continue it to June.
June 13th, I believe, correct?
Yes.
I'm not even, and then longer for, possibly longer for that other part of it, the internal thing, yeah.
Did you ever gain an understanding of what the reasoning was behind having them inward facing?
I think that I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, with people from the department, Captain Durbin and Lieutenant Reese. I think the idea was to write a policy for these fixed cameras. Fixed surveillance cameras, and it just was, because it was understood that they might be used for various purposes, they, I think, tried to have a comprehensive approach. I mean, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
But it was complicated because one of the main issues that we brought up, and it was brought up by some council members, was that originally these cameras were for criminal investigations solely. And we brought that up. And so it was very kind of a messy conversation, because part of the reason it wasn't for criminal investigations solely is because of these internal facing cameras that had to do with employee surveillance and, anyway. Captain, did you?
Yeah, that's fairly accurate. There's at least to my understanding as well, there was 3 cameras already, or systems already in existence at the transfer station, San Pablo Park, and the marina. And our task was to write a policy that covered not only the proposed intersection cameras in the city, but also those cameras. And so it did get a little difficult to cover it. And there's laws that also the retention period discussions were also a little bit muddy, because depending on what the cameras are for, my understanding is that those retention periods might be a little different. So it was kind of hard to fit everything into one policy, but we did what we thought fit and worked for everything, considering the task.
Thank you, Captain, I appreciate that. Is there any other questions that we want to get on this right now, or if not, I'm gonna move on?
Okay, I'm just wondering if you can share the views of the accountability board on this. You said they've been shared many times already with council. Whatever it is that you share, if you could send that to the new members, that would be great. Thank you.
And I also, I'm sorry, Director, another question, beyond the short report that was in the supplemental that was available last night, somebody mentioned to me that there was a discussion of a lengthy 50-page report, and I wasn't sure, did that include all the back and forth, the original version, and then our red line version, and
So there were 4 different documents produced in this process. So the 2 initial policy recommendations, one for surveillance and one for the drones. I think the drones, if I'm not correct, that one, if I'm not mistaken, that one was 125 pages, because it had attachments. It had the actual policy itself and other attachments. The other one also had attachments. I think it came out to 50 pages. And then the Public Safety Committee, they asked the questions of the board, and then produced the 2 memos, and those were about 5 pages each. So.
do you have electronic versions of all of those things?
Yes.
Are they publicly available, or?
They're, well, I don't think they're posted on our website, but they were when they were initially submitted, I think they went into in the packet, they include communication to council, but they were included in those subsequent council meetings. But we can try to make sure we post on our website. Do we have the ability to do this?
Yes.
We'll do that.
Excellent. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and keep this party going, and if there's not anything else from staff, if you'd like to.
And a few more items.
Okay, let's go ahead. Let's keep them running.
Okay, so I just wanna promote that there's going to be a specialized care unit community dialogue taking place. And that's going to be held at the South Berkeley Senior Center on May 31st, next Wednesday from 6 to 7. It's also available via Zoom. And
What is this?
Specialized Care Unit Community Dialogue. And it will be the City of Berkeley's new 24/7 mental health and substance use crisis response team, which will be implemented in partnership with the Bonita House. This meeting will be a great opportunity to learn about the specialized care unit, ask questions, and provide comments about the upcoming program. So that's being hosted by the health department in the Health and Community Service Department of the city. And I can forward you that information as well. There is also a webinar, NACO webinar coming up on June 7th, understanding force used in effecting arrest. And I believe our investigator, Wechter, who's not present right now, he's on leave. He is serves in the training committee with NACO, and he was able to identify a well-respected captain, and actually Berkeley's own. He was a captain here in Berkeley before he moved on elsewhere. Captain Fambi will be leading the discussion. In the quick synopsis is understanding the types of force officers are taught to apply when effecting arrest is a critical skill for oversight investigators, board and commission members, and anyone who reviews police reports or video footage use of force. On June 7th, 2023 at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, NACO will welcome retired Captain Spencer Fambi to discuss and demonstrate basic academy taught use of force techniques used to effect arrest. Using slides and video, he will demonstrate the correct and incorrect way to apply restraint, holds, and takedowns, deliver body strikes, apply handcuffs, and among other types of force. Captain Fambi is a former director of the Boise, Idaho Police Department's Training and Education Development Division. He was previously employed by the Berkeley Police Department in California for 20 years. He has held primary assignments in patrol, narcotics, and crime prevention. And he was assigned to SWAT for 18 years as an entry team member, leading tactical operations. And just another gentle reminder that the NACO annual conference is going to be hosted in Chicago this year from November 12th to the 16th. If you're considering attending, kindly let us know so we can make those arrangements.
Board member left.
Just a quick question. I remember Captain Fambi from PRC, and I know he was a long time, served on the department here for a long time. Would we be able to get training credit for participating?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, if you could send me an email, let me know, and then we'll make the registrations and then and make sure that you get the emails.
And can I just say, I encourage everyone to make the time to do this training. I think it's important. I think it's one of Berkeley's own. I think this is a training that will go a long way in our understanding of police procedure and protocol. And so I am endorsing that everyone take the time, if they can, on June 7th to make this happen. That's it.
And how long is that training?
Usually the webinars are an hour.
That's
Could
10
you
o'clock.
explain to our new member what NACO stands for?
Sure, so NACO is the National Association for Civilian Oversight for Law Enforcement. It's a sort of umbrella organization, nonprofit that provides resources and training to civilian oversight agencies across the country.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Director?
No.
Excellent. So Captain Durbin, you're up. Agenda item number 7, Chief of Police's report.
All right, thank you. So
Oh, I'm sorry. It's my turn. Agenda items,
Nine.
and yes,
The
it is.
numbers are all.
The numbers are messed up, excuse me. That is 9. And I'm just gonna say that was my excuse for messing that up. This, of course, 9. So the announcements that I'd like to share with you before I open it up to everyone is that full disclosure, I wanna let everyone know, I did a interview with Berkeley Side about board member Owen's resignation and what that meant to our board. I wanna make sure everyone knows that, to look out for that being fully transparent, I was fully transparent too. So I just wanted to share that and make sure everybody knew that that's coming. Take a look out for it. Are there any other board members who'd like to share anything at this time?
I have a question. Are they going to publish it?
I believe so. Yes. I like to make news. If I talk, I'm making news. Anybody else?
I just have a question because I was not aware of this new location. I just want to make sure. So meetings moving forward, we're here, or will there be any changes?
We're gonna talk in directions now.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my understanding from that this one had, the most, all the different amenities that the board wanted, the parking and central location, so we did, upon request, make it what they here for the rest of the year. So there should be no meeting location change, it might be in a different room within here, but we have been here for the last 3.
Okay. Go on vacation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So now, Captain Durbin, if you don't mind, it's agenda item number 10, you are on.
All right, good evening, PAB staff, good evening, board members. Welcome to the newest board member. And I have to say, even though I'm not there, I want to echo Councilmember Harrison's sentiment that I do look forward to meeting the newest board member, but also lucky. So I got to make my way over there. See, you can't help but smile. I knew I was going to say it, and I'm still smiling. So welcome to all the newest members. And good evening. I'll start with our. What's that?
I just said Lucky herself is asleep or himself.
Oh, I'll talk softly. I'll start with staffing. Our staffing numbers have dropped slightly as a result of a couple anticipated separations since Chief Lewis was last here. So we're down to 148 sworn officers right now, but we're still at 21 dispatchers. But there is I think a general sense of optimism as we've been conducting lots of background investigations, and the chief's been very busy the last few weeks with interviews. Over the last 2 weeks, she's had, I don't know how many interviews, but I know it's resulted in 3 officers being given job offers, a dispatcher being given a job offer, and a community service officer being given a job offer. And we also have 3 officer applicants in background investigations and plan to start 3 more dispatch background investigations in the very near future. Following up on something that I mentioned last time I was here, the recruitment and retention incentive program, we have made some progress. If you recall, as I mentioned last month, we made it available citywide, and that created some hurdles for us, but I think we've gotten through those hurdles, and we expect that program to be up and running this summer. So there's some optimism there. I'm not sure how impactful that will be, but I think it will help. Some cases of interest over the last maybe 5-6 weeks, so definitely April and early May, there was a series of sexual assaults that occurred around the UC Berkeley campus, and one of our officers developed a possible lead with connections to the Bay Area, and he was able to show victims photo lineups and receive some positive IDs. And he wrote an arrest warrant and arrested the suspect in that case. And my understanding is that suspect was charged. So that's pretty good work by a beat officer, which is something we encourage here, that our beat officers don't just take the initial report and hand it off. We encourage them to keep running with it and write search warrants, arrest warrants, and so that they can handle a case from start to finish. Also this month, detectives investigated a case where suspects purchased a $70,000+ car using somebody else's ID, so an identity theft case. And detectives identified the suspect. They obtained arrest warrants for those suspects, and they were arrested. and a search revealed a loaded ghost gun, 2 ounces of methamphetamine, and personal identifying information of over 200 more identity theft victims. On May 17th, there was a shooting in the 3100 block of Adeline. Victim was shot in the leg. It's non-threatening life or non-life-threatening injury in that case is still under investigation. And on May 22nd, so just a few days ago, bike officers in routine patrol saw a group of men in the 2800 block of Adeline standing around a car and noticed that one of them actually had a pistol in his hand. And as the bike officers approached that group, they all ran, but they were able to arrest the primary suspect with the gun in his hand. In regards to policies and just other updates, the 2022 police equipment and community safety, and I'm going to kind of take these sequentially. We're trying to get a lot of policy work done before the summer recess. So just in order, the 2022 police equipment and community safety ordinance annual report is on the council agenda for June 6th. And as the director noted already, last night we did report on the surveillance technology ordinance. As the director and board member Calavita pointed out, we do have some more work to do. Those are going to be going back to council on June 13th. So we know there's additional work involved with those surveillance technology orders. We are wrapping up another quarterly update on fair and impartial policing, and we plan to submit that to council on June 27th. And we will provide the PAB with a copy as soon as it is through the final internal review. And we are reviewing right now and making the final edits on our report related to the annual military equipment report. So that's pursuant to Assembly Bill 481 and our policy 709. And that report is expected to go before council July 11th. And so again, once that document is through the internal review process, we will share a copy with the PAB for review as well. We're also looking now at getting the compendium report finalized as well. And we hope to get that done and in front of council before the summer recess as well. In terms of follow-up items, I actually don't see any follow-up items or deliverables to the PAB right now from the PD, but let me know if I'm wrong. I do know that the body-worn camera subcommittee meetings are underway and that we do have staff participating in that subcommittee. And I think that's it for me.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns? Board member Calavita.
Captain Durbin, thank you for that report. You mentioned a policy that's going before council on June 6th, and I missed what policy that was related to. Which ordinance?
That's the city, the police equipment and community safety ordinance annual report. So that's the report that's very similar to the report that's required by Assembly Bill 481.
And will that be coming to us first or not?
I believe that it did.
We've already reviewed it.
We did it?
It's already been done.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No,
My mistake is too many to review. I don't remember.
It's
Yeah.
hard to keep track, so that's okay.
Is there any other questions? Oh, Kelvin, you want one more from Vice Chair?
Just a real quick question, of the 148 officers, can you tell me how many are on patrol?
How many are what? I'm sorry.
How many are on patrol, are assigned to the patrol division?
Oh, yeah, I can. So our operations division, patrol is within operations. And so that's the largest division in the department. But if you say specifically patrol, because the Community Service Bureau is also there, the bike officers are also there, but in just assigned to patrol are
It's 60.
is
60?
60, Lieutenant?
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you, as
Okay.
always.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question. Thank you.
Can I ask just a process question? So reviewing all the policies is part of the purview of the board, and is there a timeline for when they come to the board vis-a-vis when they're supposed to go to council?
Yes,
Okay,
we are guided by timelines.
okay,
It's
so
our whole-
like how much time do we typically have to review it?
It'll depend on the policy, but we'll be more than happy to, it's within our plans to actually schedule a time of the next few weeks, so we can cover some of those policy aspects of it.
Okay, all right.
Because it does vary, like, for example, some of them we have to receive them for 30 days. Some of them we have a certain time, like in February, which is controlled equipment, where they receive it, and then we have the time to review it. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that's 60 days. So it really just depends on the specific task.
Okay,
But there's a few core ones that we'll be happy to give you those timelines for.
okay,
And if I may, there's different places within the legal structure, so some are within the ordinance, it requires a certain time frame. Some within the charter requires a certain time frame. But that's where you need to, we can create a list and we'll go over which ones are doing.
okay.
But our hope is to always get them far enough in advance that we can have meaningful input.
Right, okay.
Well, Devin, I want to thank you for your time, effort, and energy. We appreciate you here. And with that, we're going to let you go and move on to agenda item number 11, subcommittee reports. We have some discussion and action on these. Director, do you want to take some of the discussion around A, or how would you like to do it?
Sure, so if I may,
Please.
as we know, board member Owens, stepped down from her role. And she also, because she stepped down from her role, she was actually the chair of that particular policy. So, policy subcommittee. So you would need to appoint a new chair. And I don't know if at this time you were prepared to make that decision. Right now, the two, members of that subcommittee are yourself, chair, and and board member Calavita. So, the other option too, though, is, we did talk about in the June meeting, we were going to do a realignment or reassessment of the different subcommittees. So potentially you can, have appoint a new member to that subcommittee, and then decide from there which person will be the chair.
I think in the situation we're in with human resources right now, that would be prudent. I'd like us to be able to sit down, rearrange our subcommittees, make sure that our new members have the opportunity to join enthusiastically. I'm looking at you, Board Member Wilson. As we build up our numbers, we have been working very hard with very few members. And we're welcoming of your energy and effort because we need some help here. And what we can do in this situation is bring everyone together and figure out where we'd like to serve, where our strengths and weaknesses are, and then start appointing new members and new chairs. And I'd like to see if we can do that process at our next meeting. Is that okay with the office? If that works for you guys? I'd say let's agenda this or table this for next time. And we'll be able to appoint a new chair, appoint new members to the different subcommittees that we have. We've even talked about creating new subcommittees that we need to get moving on, we can discuss and take that conversation head on. If that's all right with the board, if everyone feels comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Are we okay with that?
Chair.
All right,
Chair, I do
Yes.
feel that there's a lot of work to do on some of these subcommittees. I prefer not to wait for another 2 weeks before you and I we're the only two members of this,
but I'd like to add a third, and that's what I'm saying.
yes, I know, but we could still we've been doing stuff and we can
Yes.
continue.
Yes,
And the new member possibly will be a new commission member, board member, and they'll take time to get up and going.
100%.
I just think that there are things that we can do. I'd really like to get together with staff and you and discuss some going forward,
Okay,
next steps.
I think there's a compromise here that's being laid out. If there's a way for us to meet, to prepare for the work we're doing as subcommittee.
Right, just to talk about next steps.
I love it.
Um,
Yeah.
You know, because, yeah,
I'm okay with that. I support that. Office, what do you guys think?
Yeah, and I wasn't suggesting that you couldn't meet, I was just letting you know you have a vacancy in your chair.
yeah,
Yeah,
But yeah, you can't definitely meet.
I'd like to move ahead with some conversation.
Yeah.
okay. But please don't let me think that I'm taking away from that. I encourage that. For me, it's the structure of these subcommittees, getting chairs situated, and getting organized.
Got you members.
Yeah, we're rebooting.
Yeah.
This is the reboot. So, that being said, I'd like to go to, well, Vice Chair Harris, I know you've been enjoying Europe, and it's been a minute, it's so good to see you. Would you be comfortable doing a report on body worn camera policy, or?
Sure, well, we actually met today, earlier today was our second meeting, and it was very productive. We had a lot of conversation around, you know, when a complainant could view the body on camera. We actually, let's see, we had Opie Cummings and
That will do.
Ledoux attended the meeting today, so not a lot to report yet, because we're just getting started, but our next meeting will be June 1st. I mean, the 8th, right, June 8th, and yeah, we're working through it, so.
Excellent. I'm excited about that, and I look forward to hearing about your work on June 8th. Which brings me to the item 10C or 11C, conflict of interest, and that is Chair Leftwich.
Yes, not much to report. We will be meeting again next week. And I'm kind of hoping that maybe with board member Wilson's background that we can, if nothing else, pick her brain.
I think it's a great idea. Sounds like a natural fit. Can I also say for this subcommittee that I also serve on, that we are looking to garner the assistance of board member, or ex-board member Ramsey, to see if there's any help that he can provide.
Now, I'm confused because I
I'm
thought
doing-
it was just board member Harris and I that were on this
That's true.
subcommittee.
That's true. I'm going to lend myself to this subcommittee.
Great. We
Not
have,
officially, but
come on
yes,
in if you want
Yeah, you know,
to join us.
I'm coming.
Can you
Yes.
explain a little bit
What
about
is it?
what's the subcommittee?
Yeah, so this, so you know, we're operating under a new charter, right? That has not been interpreted, and we were tasked with developing regulations. And so there's been, unfortunately, the charter was not well drafted. There's a lot of ambiguity and about the extent of our authority. And we've taken certain positions in the regulations, and some of it, the city attorney represents both the police department and the PAB. And so we've been concerned that there's a conflict of interest between them representing both of us, not all the time, but under some circumstances. And so we've been going back and forth with the city attorney's office on this issue. And so we finally have developed a subcommittee to focus on it exclusively. And so that's the focus of it, is the potential conflict of interest with the city attorney representing us, as well as the city itself and the police department when there's some contentious and unclear issues.
And we don't have a budget to hire outside counsel.
Well, not only that, but under the charter says that the city attorney shall provide legal advice to us. And then if the city attorney decides that there's a conflict, then the city council can provide some funds for us to have outside counsel, but the city attorney herself needs to declare that there's a conflict. So we don't have separate money set aside, and the charter doesn't provide us with independent counsel.
Excellent explanation. Cleared it up, at least for me. I got it. Is there anything else that we want to discuss with conflict of interest right now? As a board, we're good? Okay. Then I'm gonna move to agenda item number 12, which is old business. This is a discussion and action, training on Graham v. Connor.
If we give us, there's no real action here, but we agendize this, and board member Wilson, for your background. We agendize this a few times, so sometimes we have technical glitches, or other times we had too many items on the agenda, so we postponed it But whenever the agenda is an opportunity to do a training during these meetings, we're going to try to take advantage of it, also for the benefit of the members of the public. So we identified the Plexi, they have these Plexi talks that they call it, it's sort of like TED Talk, but they're created to be bite-sized pieces of information for individuals, not only law enforcement, but individuals interested in matters related to police encounters. So today, we're just going to preview that, and we're gonna do the video on Graham v. Connor, which I'm sure you're familiar with your legal training, but we're also just, again, for the members of the public to be able to benefit from the kind of the legal decisions that impact the work that law enforcement does and the oversight work that you will be doing, or are doing.
Okay.
Are we able to?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just messing with the screen a bit so that I could build the video up here. Yes. I'll go ahead and spend that.
Why be judged if someone's Tuesday for using excessive force? That's a fair question for a student at a federal law enforcement training center. Hi, my name is Tim Miller. I'm an instructor at the legal division for the center at Glencoe, Georgia. The leading case on use of force is the 1989 Supreme Court decision in Graham v. Connor. The court stated that all claims that law enforcement officers have used excessive force, deadly or not, and the coercion, arrest, investigatory stop, or other seizure of a free citizen should be analyzed under the Fourth Amendment and its objective reasonable standards. So what happened? Mr. Graham was actually a good guy. Unfortunately, he was also a diabetic. And feeling the onset of an insulin reaction one day, he called his friend Barry and asked for a ride to a convenience store. I helped to buy some orange juice and thought that the sugar in the juice would counteract the reaction. After the two men arrived at the store, Graham got out of the car and hastily went inside. The step-up line was too long. Mr. Graham turned around and hastily returned to the car. In his diabetic state, he probably didn't think to ask to jump to the head of the line. Back inside the car, he told Barry to go to another friend's house. Maybe the friend would have some juice. Waiting and watching outside the store was Officer Connor. Officer Connor had watched Mr. Graham hastily enter and then leave the store. Connor suspected something was amiss. He followed the two men for a block or so and then activated his overhead lights, signaling for them to stop. Beside the road, Barry tried to explain that Graham was just having a sugar reaction, but Connor was not convinced. Connor told the two men to wait at the car. He then directed another officer to return to the store and determine what happened. Well, things got worse from that point. Graham got out of the car. He ran around the car 2 times, sat on the curb, and momentarily passed out. Backup officers arrived. Mr. Graham was handcuffed, thrown into the backseat of a police car. All this time, Barry and Graham, after he regained consciousness, tried to explain that his friend was just having an insulin reaction, but their pleas had no effect. Then Connor received a report from the officer who returned to the store. Nothing was amiss, and Mr. Graham sued the officers. So how should Officer Connor and these other officers be judged? On the one hand, Mr. Graham was an innocent man. On the other, the officer did not know that at the time. The Supreme Court stated that Connor and the other officers should be judged under the Fourth Amendment's objective reasonableness test. That test could be boiled down to 3 questions. First, what did the officer do, or what was the force he used? Second, what were the facts confronting the officer at the time he used force? And second, could a reasonable officer believe that what the officer did fell within the range of reasonableness after applying the facts to the Graham and other factors for using force? Note that the perspective that counts is the reasonable officers. which is obviously the court looking at the facts through the lens of this hypothetical officer. The point being, the subjective, the actual, whether good or bad, are not relevant. Officer Connor may have honestly believed that Mr. Graham was incompetent. However, the court's objective test asks what a reasonable officer could believe. Reasonable force is from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene. This reasonable officer considered the totality of the facts and circumstances confronting the officer at the time. The only caveat on what can be considered is the no 20/20 hindsight rule, something that was not reasonably known when the officer stopped Mr. Graham and placed in handcuffs was a report from the officer who returned to the store. Nothing was amiss, but to consider that report would be judging Connor and the other officers by hindsight. The no 20/20 hindsight rule, well, it probably worked in Officer Connor's favor in this case. But what if Officer Connor had learned while writing a use of force report that a suspect had a violent criminal history? Whether force is reasonable or not depends on the facts confronting the officer at the time. So, could a reasonable officer believe that stopping Mr. Graham, handcuffing him, and forcing him into the back of a police car was objectively reasonable? The Supreme Court stated that was the relevant question. What follows are some facts and circumstances that help a court make that decision. They are for illustrative purposes, and not all of them are in the Graham decision. For example, Officer Connor might write in his use of force report, I saw Mr. Graham run into the store. The door had barely closed to the convenience store before I saw him open it and run back out to Mr. Barry's car and get into the car. I heard the tires screech as the driver sped away at a high rate of speed. Well, would that be enough to stop the two men? Supreme Court's decision in Terry versus Ohio states that an officer may conduct a temporary investigative detention based on reasonable suspicion that criminal activities are afoot. An officer's training and experience is also relevant in making that decision. Connor might add, based on what I saw and my department receiving several complaints of shoplifting from the store over the past several weeks, I activated my overhead lights and stopped the car. Connor would be admitting to affecting a Fourth Amendment seizure, but a seizure is reasonable when the officer can point to specific articulable facts that criminal activities are afoot. It should be obvious by now that the officer must help the court visualize what happened. Using good action verbs in a report, what you saw, said, or heard makes that visualization possible. Connor might write, after he stopped, I walked to his car. A walk is a good action verb. The listener can visualize or see Connor walking. The report might continue, I told both men to stay in their car. I ordered another officer to go back to the convenience store and ask what happened. Next, I saw Mr. Graham get out of the car. Graham opened the passenger door. He ran around the car 2 times, sat down on the curb, and fell over as if he had passed out. Officers can make objective opinions. Now, objective opinions are supported by facts. Connor might add, it was my opinion at the time that Mr. Graham was under the influence of alcohol. I make that opinion based upon my years of experience with intoxicated people. They are generally irrational. Graham was not rational. He ran around a car 2 times after I, a police officer, told him to wait inside. Traffic was on the road. Then he sat on the curb and fell over as if he had passed out. To further support his opinion of intoxication, Connor might add, I saw that Graham's eyes were glassy. His speech was slurred. His breath smelled sweet, as if he had been drinking alcoholic beverages. Incidentally, a diabetic's breath may also smell sweet. Connor might explain why intoxication is so relevant. Someone who's not thinking rationally could have stepped out into traffic and caused an accident, he might state. Moreover, people under the influence of alcohol or narcotics, they're less likely to obey an officer's commands and more likely to be assaulted. Facts paint the picture. Facts allow the court to picture what happened and then make an objective decision. But mere conclusions make someone ask how or why. An example of a mere opinion might be simply stating, Graham was non-compliant. How was he non-compliant? How talk creates the same confusion as mere conclusions. Consider, he made a furtive movement. How does someone make a furtive movement? And pre-assault indicator, what's a pre-assault indicator? One more, other words of caution might be, stay clear of this, stay clear of fuzzy words, like he indicated, suggested, or implied something. How do we suggest? How do we imply that? Report should state what the officers saw, heard, and said. Good fact articulation is not easy. It also takes time. What's more, officers may experience tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, memory loss, but they should paint the picture with the sights and sounds that they remember. While it may be impossible to recall exactly what someone said, the officer may still remember, he screamed at me and clenched his fist like a boxer. The Supreme Court stated, the test for reasonableness under the Fourth Amendment is not capable of precise definition or mechanical application. In short, there are no perfect answers. The perfect answer in Graham's case might have been for Officer Connor to walk inside the convenience store and escort Mr. Graham to the head of the line. But that would require Connor to know all the facts. It would be judging him by hindsight. Allowance must also be made for the fact that police officers are often forced to make split-second judgments in circumstances that are tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving about the amount of force that is necessary in a particular situation. How made a decision after Graham got out of the car? Obviously, there were other options. And while hindsight may prove one option better than another, what matters is whether the option chosen fell within the range of reasonableness based on the facts confronting the officer at the time. Reasonable force is a balancing test. The facts confronting the officer at the time are applied to the Graham and other factors for using force. The Graham factors are reasons for using force. They act like a checklist of possible justifications for using force. They are not exhaustive and not all of them are maybe applied in every particular case. The Graham factors are the severity of the crime, the immediacy of the threat, and whether the suspect was actively resisting or trying to evade an arrest or other lawful seizure by flight. The severity of the crime generally refers to the underlying reason for seizing someone in the first place. Officer Connor appeared to be acting under a reasonable suspicion that Graham stole something from a convenience store. While that suspicion proved incorrect, the question is whether it was reasonable at the time. Arrests and investigative detentions are traditional governmental reasons for seizing people. It also be reasonable to seize someone who is not suspected of any wrongdoing. Reasonable force can be used to control the movements of a passenger during a traffic stop. It may be used to detain someone in or around a home while executing a warrant for contraband. The operative word for any type of seizure is reasonableness, which always depends on the facts. Let's skip immediacy of the threat for a moment and go to resistance and flight. Resisting a lawful seizure affects several governmental interests. It may prevent the officer from executing a warrant, or in Officer Connor's situation, prevent him from completing his investigation. Remember too, the Connor told Graham to stay in the car, and if Graham visibly resisted that order by getting out, he ran around the car, sat down on the curb. Traffic was on the road. He could have caused an accident or injured others. Now let's look at threat. The Graham factors cannot be considered in a vacuum. The nature of Graham's resistance could also support a threat to the safety of the officer or others. Threat is generally considered the most important governmental interest for using force. What's more, attempting to evade a lawful seizure by flight causes some of the same concerns as resistance, and may also pose a serious threat. It does put Supreme Court cases called Scott versus Harris and Plumhoff v. Reichert involved speeders. They fled when officers signaled them to pull over for traffic violations, and in doing so caused a significant threat to everyone on the road. The lower courts would go on to add other factors. For example, what was the known violent criminal history of the suspect? Another might be the suspect's size, height, weight, and condition compared to that of the officer. And the presence of innocent bystanders is also a factor to consider. But while the courts have listed other factors to consider, they are generally a subset of what is considered the most important Graham factor, immediacy of the threat. In Graham, the offense at issue was possible shoplifting, and the initial intrusion on Mr. Graham's liberty was only sitting in a car. As the encounter developed, however, the intrusion on his liberty became greater. But didn't the governmental interest for more force also become greater? Again, Officer Connor told the men to wait for car. Graham resisted that order by getting out. Add that to his irrational behavior and the possibility he might get out on the road and cause an accident. Maybe I should ask you, any reasonable officer believe that what the officers did, the force they used, fell within the range of reasonableness after applying the facts confronting them at the time to the Graham and other factors for using force. This has been Quincy Talks. I'm Tim Miller, and thank you for listening.
I missed that part.
Excellent.
Of course.
Are we good? Are we doing
Yeah, just a quick reminder that FLESI stands for the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, so it's one of the academies that they send most federal agencies to, but they also do a lot of training for local law enforcement.
Nice, thank you. And with that, the end of that, good, great discussion, I'm gonna see if we can take a 5-minute break. If anyone needs to use the restroom, you know, get themselves together for a second, we're just gonna take 5.
Yeah.
And the Police Accountability Board is back in session. And with that, we'll move to agenda item 13, which is new business, continued discussion on the ODPA's proposed procedure for internal, external communications between the board and other parties. And I'm going to go to director first, and board member Calvita, you're also on this.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say about it. I just wanted to have the director
Excellent.
tell us more about it.
And director?
And again, I just clarify that this is not my proposal for you to adopt that particular way of division of labor and policies that we utilized in the city of Charlottesville. That was one that we adopted out of discussions internally about what is the best way to communicate, so we're all on the same page. Provided that it's more as a tool or reference tool to look at some type of framework, but I'm happy to support whatever the board decides is the best way to communicate internally and externally. And one thing too is gonna be helpful, in my view, is that we are advancing a little bit on the emails for board members. So related to that, but I have seen some movement with IT, so that has not been abandoned, but I think it just helps for communication for a lot of different reasons. But anyway, I just threw that aside, but I'm more than happy to support whatever protocol you want to set.
I would say with regard to emails, that it was really board member Ramsey who was most concerned about that. And some of us, I think, board member Leftwich, if I'm not mistaken, and I, for sure, prefer having only one email. So I prefer not to have to look to see emails from you at a separate location, but maybe I'm a minority in that.
No, I agree.
I mean, and I'm not sure that it solves anything in terms of confidentiality to have something that's.
I believe, let me just jump in real quick. I believe it's a security issue more than it is about being privacy. So because these other email accounts are easily accessible, we want something that will guarantee, because we deal with personnel files, we deal with information that should not be let out into the public. The director is trying to make sure that our information that we receive electronically is secure.
But how does it make it more secure, just having a different,
The city server should be, I mean, there should be something with the city server.
Once you're on the network, there's a lot more protections that you have from a Gmail or Yahoo. So they can monitor that, any threats that the city is getting and any of the board members. And as we know, the next time over, there's been a big breach in the cybersecurity in Oakland. So now there's ransomware issue that they had, not necessarily, I don't know all the specifics of it, but I'm trying to mitigate, any potential concerns for the board. But, I think there are also benefits too, to communications, just being on the network, I think is helpful, but, that's my opinion and my experience in that.
I could say one thing, I think it is important to have clarity about communications, and I don't know if this is in our standing rules, I didn't review them recently, or if it's just been custom. And that is that when it comes to communications with the council, that it's the chair or the director or both, but individual board members do not communicate with the council on behalf of the board.
Right.
Which isn't to say though, that you can't, I mean, I don't know, that's what, to me, that's where there needs to be some clarity. And as far as the press also, my understanding, and again, I don't know if this was in the standing rules or just the practice that I heard, is that when it comes to the press, that the chair can talk to the press, obviously the director can, but that individuals shouldn't be making representations to the press about board positions. But again, it's probably helpful to have some clarity around that. And to me, those are the most important things. Communicating with the press and with the council. When it comes to external visits versus internal, what kind of, my concern is that I don't want some rule that says that I personally can't communicate with someone in the department, particularly if it's about scheduling a subcommittee meeting or a ride along or something that's, kind of garden variety communications that aren't sensitive. I don't think those should have to go through staff just because it's so inefficient. And maybe there should be some policy where if you're communicating with somebody in the department, if you feel like it's appropriate, CC you or something along those lines. But I would just be concerned about anything that's too rigid about if it's external, only staff can communicate externally. So anyway, those are the kind of things that I would want to watch out for.
Was the impetus for this like a problem or an issue that arose, or just a general best practice is to have communication protocols, so we should have them, or some combination of both?
I think we had an actual case where I might have been the one that relayed a communication on behalf of the subcommittee. So we started to have a lot of discussions. Okay, how do we prevent that? What's the most efficient way? Because I definitely want to, slow down the work of the board if the expectation is, for me to communicate. So we're trying to make sure we're all on the same page, and even for the police department, if they're not expecting an email, normally I make the communications to them, but if we're gonna change our procedure where they gotta get a communication from a board member, then it's helpful for them to know and have that expectation. Okay, I'm getting this communication because this is a new protocol, so we're all on the same page.
Except in the past, we did communicate. We have communicated, on a pretty informal basis
Okay.
with members of the department.
But that was PRC, no, that was the PAB.
I think.
I don't know, probably with
It's
the
been, how long has it been? 2 years or 3
Yeah.
years?
2 years, so
I
I
think we've communicated,
yeah, I think so.
You said, okay,
but yeah,
And as far as with the city attorney's office, they're always saying, well, if you want to talk to us, any of you are free to call us. And of course, I've always said, we should talk as a group. It's not that helpful if it's me having an individual conversation. But they've always made that invitation. So if we have some rigid rule about, well, you're not really supposed to have external communications, then what? It's not appropriate for me to reach out to the city attorney's office or to the chief. So I just think it is important to have some guidelines, but I just wouldn't want them to be too
I think the guideline that we have regarding speaking before council or the press has always been, in fact, I think it might be in the standing rules, I don't know, but it's always been that you say, like last night, for example, I made it very clear, I'm on the PAB and I chaired the fixed camera subcommittee, but I'm here tonight speaking to you as an individual. But an individual who has some information about this that you might, so. I always see members do that, whether it's in public comment or officially. Because in order to speak officially for the PAB, we always had to have a vote authorizing somebody to speak for the board. Remember, we always did that. And so it seems to me that we ought to be able to have open lines of communication, like you're talking about, that you could talk to the city attorney's office, but always with the understanding that you're not representing the board. This is your opinion that or your issue that you want to talk to them about. And I think that, so.
But I just have a question about that. So if you're bringing issues that are related to the board and then you're going and saying, but I'm an individual resident, I'm not,
Right.
you know, that seems like a conflict.
I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, if the board hasn't empowered you to speak on behalf of the board, then we have to
Right,
say.
no, I understand that, but I guess my concern is that that's fine. But if I'm speaking regarding the board's work, but saying I'm an individual, then I feel like that is sort of a conflict.
You definitely lose power in the conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree that I'm not sure we always have, and like last night, I would have assumed, especially since you're on the subcommittee, know so much about it. Would have been fine with me. I assumed you were speaking on
Yeah.
behalf of the board, so.
Well, I mean,
I don't think that's prudent. And I'm gonna be.
no, I said at the beginning, I said, you know, I'm not speaking for the board. Because, and I explained, because in order to do that, they would have had to
Right.
authorize me 2 weeks ago at the meeting.
Right.
And so I started out that way and I concluded
Right.
that way, so
But that was sort of a different situation because it was a last minute.
it was a last
It was a
minute
last
thing,
minute
and
thing,
I
yeah, so you
called me
had
up there to
choice.
talk,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
okay.
So that makes sense, but I mean, and you know, when we have an opportunity to vote or to make those decisions ahead of time, then I think that we should be doing that so that we
Oh,
can
yeah.
send a
You are
representative.
empowered.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It was yeah, that was a unique situation.
Yeah.
And I agree with you 100%, Vice Chair. If there is someone that wants to speak with the power and authority of the board behind them, especially in the situation you were in, I think that is something that we should look ahead towards. We should calendar when we think we need to speak in front of council and be prepared to take those votes.
However, I would say that we ought to be able to speak during the public comment period. That I don't think there will be a gag rule that just because we're on the board, we can't do the 1 minute or 2 minutes of public comment.
I
Yeah,
think it's 100% fair, and I'll go.
As long as you
I'll fight
just
for
say,
that.
as long as you just say, you know, you're an individual.
Okay, Director, and then I'm gonna wrap this up. That means that I will go and I will say, hey, it's prudent that these counts are not, it's imperative that these council members have the opportunity to speak with the authority of their experience and knowledge.
Oh, has that been prevented before?
No.
Oh.
No, I was just saying that we're talking about being authorized to
Okay.
speak and everything on the same, but that's not counting the public comment period. We're free to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just, before you wrap it up, I just have 2 thoughts. One, I think it's different to make a representation, you know, on behalf of the board. Than to have a meeting with the department or the city attorney's office that I would characterize more as information gathering to help probably with subcommittee work or whatever else. And I think the communications protocols should reflect that. Like you want a lot more procedure around being able to represent as the board or positions of the board, less procedure around information gathering. The only caveat to that is the department or the city attorney's office, they may prefer coordinated communication. It sounds like not from the city attorney's office, but they may have a preference. Because I know running an organization that has a board, it's not that wonderful to have the board members. I'll go out to all 600 staff asking for
Right.
stuff, right? So they may have a preference, which we should respect.
Right.
But I just see those as a little bit different. And then I was just wondering if this national organization that I already forgot what it's called.
NACO.
Yeah, do they promulgate or at least collect communications protocols for other accountability boards around the country. Well, we could create some, is what I'm saying.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And with that-
Because I was just gonna say that the structure of these boards and commissions is so variable across the
Right.
country that we're almost sort of unique. Everybody's almost unique.
And with that, I'm gonna keep the conversation
Mr.
moving.
Chair, I'm sorry, I thought you had recognized me here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Blakey.
Just go, I'll make it quick, but I think, because the chair, and this is why I think it's helpful to codify some of these things, but the chair is the natural spokesperson, I think, as you have established, but in the cases where you won't be able to have a special meeting or regular meeting, is there no room for it? I wish the city attorney was here to clarify this, but I don't know if you, the chair, you can empower to delegate somebody. I'm not gonna be present, but I choose you, and that I don't think would require a board vote, right? Because you're the spokesperson, so that might be an option in time limited situations. And the other thing, I think it'd be helpful to codify that disclaimer, so everybody uses the same language, you
Good
know.
point.
That'd be helpful.
Excellent. I think those points are important, and with that, we're gonna leave this conversation where it lies and move to agenda item B on this section. Discussion and action regarding the processing of commendations for Berkeley Police Department officers.
It's on page 30 of the materials.
That's the section within the standing rules. Based on our discussion last time, the board seemed to want to move in the direction of making sure that we have, not necessarily procedure, because we have that within our standing rules, but that we have set times as to when we would review them instead of one time at some point in the year. Whether that be quarterly, whether we do that twice a year. Like, for example, if we did it twice a year, we could do it before our August break and then do it before our winter break. Just having that structure so that, one, we as staff can prepare y'all to review these commendations, and so that we could establish that procedure with the BPD, so we can get those and get them processed in a timely order. Because as we noted, some of those commendations that came in, those were from a few months back. So we want to make sure that we're processing these in a timely order to give that, where necessary, that appropriate recognition, and so we have time to plan that.
Very nice.
Please.
I think it's a great idea to try to focus on doing it at least twice a year, because what's happened in the past, and has happened in the PRC, is we get a big chunk of them. And just for the new board members, so these are commendations that come in either from the public or from the department. You know, recommending that someone be commended for certain behavior. And so we have rules and we've come up with some factors that we should consider. But what was difficult is we get so many at once and it would take so long to go through them. And I noticed we have this process under 3 that says a board member wishing to initiate a commendation shall submit the proposal to the board secretary for placement on the board agenda. We've never done that. So it was much more informal, where it's like, does anybody wanna, you know, we're all sitting with this stack. Well, I think, you know, this officer on page 20.
Yeah, we like this, you don't like this, we like this,
Right,
that's.
so, I mean, these are standing rules, but we're not complying with that piece of it. But I personally like the idea of doing it twice a year, because some of them went back like 2 years. You know, they were very old, and it seems a little stale to be given someone a commendation for something they did 2 years ago.
Completely fair, anybody else? Director.
Mr. Chair, sorry for commenting so much, but one thing too that I was thinking, that the language says you can honor with a commendation or special award or recognition. And there might be an opportunity to be creative there and think about what would be a meaningful or special award for somebody that you have recognized. Just to give an example, in the chiefs, last discussion I had with the chief and in the city managers weekly report, they indicated that they sent an officer to DC for Officers Memorial Week. And that might be something that perhaps if it's an officer that you want to commend, perhaps you can sponsor a trip to something like that. or just think about does it mean to get a commendation from the board? So,
Yeah, could be a plaque or something.
whatever, I'm just,
Yeah.
I don't know
Good
what the
idea.
practice has been.
Can I just ask a question?
Of course.
So, when I saw this on the agenda, I was a little surprised that the accountability board would be doing this at all. So I'm just wondering, is this something, it's just a carryover from the old commission? Cause it just seems odd to me.
Why?
Cause we're supposed to be like holding the department accountable, being independent. By nature of what a commendation is, you're not particularly being independent. I think it would be odd if one year you give a commendation and the next year we're suggesting discipline for the same officer. It looks weird.
No, I hear what you're
Yeah.
saying, but there is a balance to this and being unbiased. We deal with the positives and the negatives.
Yeah.
So our accountability isn't only holding the department in the light, it is also saying, we see what you're doing and we want to accommodate you for your good work. So, you know, as much as we dial in on what can be better, we also want to acknowledge what they're doing great. And the Berkeley Police Department does great things.
And it's not unusual that, I mean, I wouldn't say it's not unusual, but in that circumstance where we give someone an accommodation and then next year, you know, we're saying, wait a minute, you didn't do this right. That can happen to anybody, but I think that it's important for us to acknowledge the good work and the hard work that the officers are doing in the department. So, and this is just a little small token of something that we can do, you know, to show our collaboration and cooperation with the department as well. So it's just not all about like, you know, we're hunting down the bad guys. That's just not what it's all about with the board. At least that's not what I think we're here for.
No, I wasn't suggesting that. I just think it doesn't feel that independent.
So it's your first day.
Yeah.
Ask everything,
But we
questions
just
on
get an
that.
entire, we get an entire form that tells us and the whole situation of from A to B, what happened, how it started, what the officer did, why, they're getting an accommodation from the.
Most of the references for accommodations come from the public.
Yeah. and they-
A lot of them come from,
Mhm.
the higher ups within the department, but the public are the ones that are reacting and saying, hey, we want you to look at this. And it's part of our job too.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's also a charter requirement, so.
And that's it.
The board shall establish a regular meeting to recognize the sworn employees of the police department for instances of outstanding service to members of the public, the community at large, or the department. So, but, yeah, and it's not uncommon for civilian oversight agencies to provide some commendation.
I also think it serves the purpose of highlighting what we consider excellent work.
Right.
And a lot of times it has to do with, I hope we're not gonna go through them tonight, because in my mindedness tonight, I've gone through them, I know which ones, but I left my packet at home, so I can't do that. But a lot of times what I find really impressive is significant amount of de-escalation in situations where, oh my God, such and such could have happened, and look what they did instead. It's really pretty impressive in some of these instances, and so I think it's kind of serves a good purpose in that way too.
We might want
Thank
to
you.
come up with a better process though, because I think our process,
I'm with you on that. I heard you,
Okay.
I heard.
it
We are
wasn't,
gonna work on that, I promise.
weren't we gonna do that tonight?
To move along.
I do. It's so
So
good.
is that gonna be on the next?
I think so, because one, we're not prepared as a group to go over restructuring, I don't think.
Okay, I thought that's what this agenda item was for, but I'm fine with continuing.
May I make a suggestion? Since we are in this like rebooting phase, you called it originally, and I know for a fact that this next meeting, some of the subcommittees, just because they were ad hoc, are gonna get removed from that process. We start, part of that process is also identifying some of the issues that we want to focus on. Whether that be updating the standing rules, whether that be establishing commendation. Right, like just adding to these procedures, making small tweaks to reflect something. I think that would be a good idea, or even if we have, for example, standing subcommittee, of course, those would be public where we review them. So there's still that, and this is just me brainstorming here, so we still have that public recognition that someone, like a member of the public did in fact amend an officer. And then we could kind of select, again, the board, like select which one deserves even more recognition. Again, it's just a brainstorm, it doesn't have to be that way. But since we're going through this process, I just think it's a really good time to really start structuring these things so that we have that, yes, that platform moving forward.
But to jumpstart things, Jose, next time at our next meeting or whenever it fits the agenda, maybe you can give us a proposal. Like every March and October, we do this because I think it's, we could talk about it sort of endlessly, but you could just come up with a proposal and we'll vote on it.
Great, I could do that.
And a process, other than us, I think before, it hasn't been that great, the way we'd all just kind of take turns.
Yeah, we went through the packet as a group and it was tedious.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
very hard for everyone to get to the same pages,
Yeah.
same information. I 100% agree. We do need the reboot. I'm just concerned. I thought we'd have one more board member here tonight. I was gonna, see if we could go ahead and forge that moving forward, but I think it'd be prudent if you wait just one more week, we get the extra person here, work on the subcommittee and get these, at least a streamlined plan. I totally support that thought. I want to make sure you hear me. We do need a better situation. And that being said, if anybody else want to add anything to this topic, because I'm planning on moving on.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know. Is it hard to put these, I love these numbers on the pages. Is it hard to do that? Because we have a packet of commendations this thick. And when it comes to saying, I recommend officer so-and-so, on page 35, but we don't have pages. Yes,
Yeah, that's a combination.
there's no pages on. So,
Oh, sorry, I didn't get your back. I distributed with, I'm sorry.
so if it's not too hard, it'd be great to have this.
No, it's not, they were transferred over to us, through PDF format. What I do with these is that, for example, when I organize anything you sent to me for the agenda, and in like 5 minutes, I use Adobe Acrobat and it gets numbered, so. It's sufficient as long as I have all the PDFs together, which in this case I do, so I could definitely do
Okay,
that.
great.
And make that a practice.
Makes it much more efficient.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not problem solving. It's like this. I'm so oriented. So here we go, and I'm going to give the floor over to the director so we can discuss the incorporation of animal assisted intervention program and overtime learning.
Thank you all. Sorry, get the PowerPoint going. So as you may have seen from the packet and from the earlier interaction with Councilmember Harrison, we have a special team member, a new member, part of our office. It's Lucky. It's going to be incorporated as a animal assisted intervention program that we're launching to provide better services and I think community relations. If you can go to the next slide, please. And that's a picture of Lucky right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have a really robust curriculum, the agency that we registered Lucky with, it's called Pet Partners. And they have really good material that's provided in the packet. I'm not gonna go over all the material, but here's just some gentle points that I'm gonna touch base on. The human animal bond, and the definition of research regarding that, animal assisted interaction, the terminology related to that. Who is Pet Partners, why I chose Pet Partners, and the next steps and any questions you may have. So the human animal bond is in full transparency being mental health awareness month. I think that Lucky for me, my experience has been very pivotal companion. I unfortunately lost my father during the pandemic, and Lucky has been serving along my side as an assistance animal. And one of the things that I saw with Lucky is just his natural ability and knack for having interactions with people. And I started to looking at more ways that I'm benefiting directly from Lucky, but what ways can other community members benefit? So we're started looking at registering as a therapy animal, and I did extensive research in about the different benefits of the human animal bond, and there's actually tangible benefits that's well documented in empirical research. To give example that we see in the screen, pain reduction, mood enhancement, encourages physical activity, and can motivate you, individual, can lower blood pressure and help with heart. So there's a lot of tangible physiological benefits that individuals get from having that human animal bond, and also the animals themselves benefit from the interaction with humans. You can advance the next slide, please. So animal assisted intervention, it's a broad term that includes animal assisted therapy, animal assisted education, and animal assisted activities. One of the ways that I'm envisioning that this program and how we're going to launch it is to be able to do a little bit of each. So animal assisted therapy would be when we have interactions with community members. We know, especially in the investigative process, it could be very difficult to tell their experience and negative experiences. So we want to try to remove any barriers to giving us a full telling or a narrative. And sometimes it can be difficult, and having a therapy animal, part of that process will be beneficial to the complainants. Now, we do also respect that not everybody has the same approach to animals, so it's not going to be forced on anybody. We will let them know on the onset that we do have provided service, and that we are offering it if you would like it for your interview. Animal assisted education is provided any education where you can utilize the therapy animal to promote whatever educated task you're doing. And in the different oversight agencies that have been engaged, we did a lot of know your rights community lessons, and especially in DC, we did a lot of engagement with high school youth. We partnered with local law schools and did street law programs. And I definitely see an opportunity to just engage, because we also have some very difficult conversations, especially with you, when they're encountering and having discussions about these very complicated police interactions. So we envision utilizing Lucky to kind of bridge the gap while we're having this conversation and those human rights discussions. We're also going to allow Lucky to be part of the community as much as we can, partner with other community stakeholders, any particular departments within the city that want to participate, including the police department. There may be opportunities where there's natural ways to interact and collaborate, and I'm open to engaging with the police department. And I also want to say that the law enforcement field has, in this particular regard with therapy animals, has been a leader. In the civilian oversight world, we've been behind. A lot of police departments around the nation have been utilizing therapy animals for when they're doing in interviews with victims of domestic violence or sexual violence, going to court with the victims. So in many regards, the police department has been doing good work in here. In the civilian oversight world, we believe, and I did check with the NAPOL executive director, Cavi, that we might be the first. So now we're being the leader, and hopefully we're motivated and challenging other agencies across the country in this regard. You can continue, please. So therapy animals provide affection and comfort to members of the public, typically in facility situations, institutions, things like the hospital, retirement homes, schools, and now it's civilian oversight. So now we're being pioneers in there. Why I chose Pet Partners, as I mentioned, I did a lot of research. There's a lot of organizations that register therapy dog animals, or therapy animals. What I really appreciated Pet Partners education and their a lot of their values, and ensuring that there's a really good advocacy on the animal human bond experience. And one of the things too is that making sure that the handler is advocating for the animal in any interactions. There might be interactions where it might not be appropriate to take Lucky to, or we might have to pull them away from it, and that's part of my role as a handler, and that's something I think Pet Partners is really good at providing really robust education. I attached some of the empirical research that they have done, and were cited in promoting, therapy animal programs. You can advance to the next slide, please. So the next steps in this process, we're launching the program, raising awareness about it. We're going to be reaching out to particular community organizations when we see that there's a natural fit for collaboration. And we're gonna develop a lot of literature to explain what this program is, how does it look like, and how we can partner with our program and also for the complainants. One other thing that I should mention, Lucky has been through a soft launch, or the program has been, and I have brought Lucky to the office. So for the past few months, he has been getting acquainted with his coworkers. He often goes to make his daily visits. He goes over to Nussel, Mr. Murillo, to give him his daily pets, and then he'll make his way over when Investigator Thomas was here. He would hang out with her. He loves sunbathing, so she has probably the most. I think her office had the most windows in our suite. But now he has also extended that welcoming spirit to Investigator Wechter. So we're definitely excited, I think, about having Lucky run in the office. And we engage in very difficult work. You know, I want to recognize that we review body worn camera that sometimes we traumatizing, and we have to recognize that in terms of our mental well-being. And also, I think this is another point I'd like to make, that historically, animals in the field of law enforcement have been used in a way that's terrorized communities. So we want to get away from that particular view that some members may have, and provide more positive interactions with animals, and hopefully that's what we're going to do with this particular program. Happy to take any questions you may have about this right now, or any comments.
I only have a comment. I'm gonna say I 100% support this initiative as a dog lover, but also somebody that believes in emotional support of animals. I believe in this program, so just want to let you guys know that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Once again, let me say thank you, Director, and with that, Alexander Maria, I have some status updates we can discuss.
Yeah, so it's a brief update. We do plan to follow up with a more formal report, as we have a tendency to. This is just regarding the last policy review that was brought to the board's attention regarding the lack of communication. The director and Lieutenant Reeves have communicated, and it was explained to us that when someone sends an email to the department, there is an automatic reply that gives several options to folks. So that was the aspect that we were willing to clarify. From my understanding, that was the board's question before we initially, like, in terms of what that process looked like. But again, we could take any questions if there's more beyond that.
Does everyone follow what we're discussing?
No.
Okay.
It's too quiet.
I remember.
I'm new and I don't know what you're talking about.
So a few weeks back, there was a gentleman that expressed concerns about what policies were regarding the police department's communication to the general inbox. And he sent some stuff and never received a response.
Oh, right.
So we looked at under board member Owen's motion, the authorized the board, the office to look a little bit more into the policies before we fully accepted it. So we've been able to get a little bit more information about these policies. And once we're ready, we'll bring it back for you to make your decision, whether you want to accept it at the policy review or whether you were gonna reject it.
I see. Thank you.
Okay. Any thoughts on that? Would anybody like to wait and see? All right. Well, with that, I'm going to open up the floor for public comment, agenda item number 11. See if there's anybody online that would like to share.
Again, because we have no current members of the public, we'll start with the virtual public comment. And I see one hand raised. Okay, Carol, you have been granted permission to speak. Carol, are you there? You're currently muted. We can't hear you, but you do have permission to speak.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I want to comment on this item because I've attended several CIT international conferences where there have been the animal assistance programs there, and they frequently, there are several parts of the country. I know it's true in Florida, but there's other areas where they're using animals in crisis intervention situations. They do ask the individual in crisis first if that's acceptable. They'll say, well, I have my dog with me, you comfortable with that? Because they may want to make sure that it's not someone who's adverse towards animals. But animals have been proven to be extremely successful at often de-escalating individuals who are in mental health crisis. And I don't know if you looked into that, but again, there are several programs. I'm sure CIT International has a list of all the programs that do utilize animals, and very successfully so. So it often will calm someone down who's highly depressed or suicidal or etc. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that said, I currently do not see any additional hands raised.
Okay. With that knowledge, I'm comfortable closing public comment at this time, which brings us up to our closed session case updates. So we will be turning off our public facing access, and we'll be entering closed session at this time.
Just a reminder for the folks who are attending virtually, you're free to remain within the webinar. The recording and the audio will be paused, but we'll be returning to report on closed session actions. Okay, with that said, I will close. So.
Police Accountability Board is back in session. Updates have been made to the board. No actions were taken within the updates. And now that brings us to our next agenda item, which is adjournment. May I have a motion? May I have a second?
Second.
And with that second, that ends our meeting this evening. Everyone have a good night.